Mistress met the billionaire husband at night, but his pregnant wife was already waiting for them. Suspicion had its own way of creeping into hearts and homes, an uninvited guest that refused to leave. Late-night phone calls, hurried whispers, and unexplained absences all pointed to a secret that threatened to unravel an otherwise perfect life. Rebecca Harrington had once believed her billionaire husband Jonathan was devoted beyond question, yet a subtle shift in his gaze revealed he was guarding something, or someone. When her worst fears came true, the betrayal burned hotter than she ever imagined. And on a moonlit night, when the mistress came to claim what she thought was hers, Rebecca was already waiting in the shadows, determined to shatter every delusion. Rebecca Harrington stood at the bay window of her sprawling estate in the Hamptons, the gentle hum of ocean waves just audible in the distance. The window overlooked a perfectly manicured garden, complete with ornate marble statues and winding paths lit by soft garden lights. Though the house was peaceful at this hour, Rebecca's mind churned with unrelenting doubts. She had always prided herself on being an intuitive woman, able to sense things others couldn't. Lately, her intuition had warned her that something was off. It started with little things. Jonathan returning home later than usual, his phone lighting up at odd hours with messages he swiped away before she could catch a glimpse. And, perhaps most telling of all, the sense that his affection had become mechanical. She remembered the gentle spontaneity that once characterized their relationship. They had been college sweethearts at Princeton, the envy of everyone who knew them. He was destined for grand entrepreneurial success, and she was the intelligent, poised partner who would help him navigate any storm. Over the years, Jonathan's ambition paid off. His business empire, Harrington Global, expanded into real estate, technology startups, and even philanthropic endeavors. They traveled the world together. Switzerland in January, Bali in May, reveled in exclusive galas, and hosted extravagant parties that made headlines. To their social circle, they were perfect, the golden couple. But the glitzy facade was now under threat. The moment seeds of suspicion had been planted in Rebecca's mind, her unshakable sense of security began to crumble. Rebecca recalled a conversation with her close friend and confidant, Clarissa Monroe, who lived part-time in Santa Barbara but often visited the Hamptons. Clarissa's sharp wit and blunt honesty had been both a comfort and a curse. Over brunch, Clarissa had mentioned noticing Jonathan's attention drifting during parties, a watchful gaze that seemed to follow a certain young woman among the guests. Clarissa couldn't recall her name, only that she was strikingly beautiful, with almond brown eyes and a sleek figure that turned heads. "You might want to keep an eye on that," Clarissa had warned. Rebecca laughed it off at the time, attributing Jonathan's occasional inattentiveness to stress. Now she was no longer certain. The possibilities gnawed at her mind. Yet Rebecca wasn't the kind of woman to fold under suspicion. If Jonathan was hiding something, or someone, she would find out. Every fiber in her body told her that something was about to explode in her carefully curated life. She could almost feel an invisible clock ticking, counting down to a catastrophic revelation. No matter how frightening, she prepared herself to face the truth. Jonathan Harrington was staring at a spreadsheet of numbers on his laptop, but the figures danced meaninglessly before his eyes. He was in the penthouse office of Harrington Global's Manhattan headquarters, surrounded by breathtaking views of the city skyline. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the bustling streets below. He usually found solace in that vantage point, top of the world, commanding everything in sight. But not tonight. His personal life was a labyrinth of secrecy. He had never intended for it to become so complicated, yet he felt inexplicably drawn to Lily Caldwell, the new marketing consultant assigned to one of Harrington Global's philanthropic projects. Initially, their relationship was purely professional. He admired her innovative ideas for a foundation that aimed to support educational opportunities in underprivileged communities. She was sharp, motivated, and unafraid to challenge him. A week into working with her, Jonathan had invited Lily to a high-profile charity dinner. He justified it to himself by saying she needed to network, But the real reason was simpler. He enjoyed her company in a way that felt different from anyone else's. Lily had a resilience in her eyes that he found magnetic, a boldness that contrasted with Rebecca's calm poise. Something about Lily made him feel alive again, as though he'd been living a script for years and only now was taking on an unscripted role. Jonathan's private phone buzzed, an impulse buy that he insisted was for work emergencies, though he knew it served another purpose. He glanced at the screen, a new text from Lily. "Hey, are you free to talk? I can't sleep." His heart rate spiked. If he were an ordinary man with ordinary problems, such a text might not demand immediate secrecy. But he was Jonathan Harrington, living under a microscope of social expectations, business obligations, and marital vows. Yet here he was, enthralled by a woman who was not his wife. Hesitating just a moment, he replied, "Give me 5 minutes. I'll call you." He rose from the desk and slipped into the small lounge adjoining his office. Pressing the phone to his ear, Jonathan heard Lily's subdued hello. Her voice was like a balm on his frayed nerves. They chatted quietly about the upcoming philanthropic gala, about her growing anxieties over the project's deadlines, and before he knew it, the conversation took a personal turn. She told him about her humble upbringing in a small town in Oregon, how she fought her way through business school, how she wanted to make a real difference in the world. She made him laugh with a self-deprecating joke about being the scrappy underdog in an industry of big shots. He confided a bit about his childhood too, his mother's aspirations for him, his father's early passing, the weight of the Harrington name. Eventually they lapsed into a comfortable silence. The entire exchange lasted maybe 20 minutes, but it felt like a timeless bubble where they connected as two souls rather than boss and employee, or as a married man and his potential paramour. They ended the call with an agreement to meet the next day to finalize details for the Foundation's event. As he hung up, Jonathan felt a mixture of excitement and guilt. The tension coiled in his chest, whispering that he was stepping onto a dangerous path. But he dismissed that voice, telling himself he was in control. After all, Jonathan Harrington had built a billion-dollar empire on his ability to manage risk. What was one small entanglement to a man like him? Lily Caldwell twirled a pen between her fingers, her eyes fixed on the design sketches pinned to the wall of the Foundation's temporary project office. She was waiting for Jonathan, rehearsing the points she needed to make. Approval of the final marketing materials, budget adjustments, sponsor confirmations. Work, she reminded herself, must remain the priority. Yet her pulse quickened at the thought of him. She hated to admit it, but she found herself longing for the moments they spent alone, catching glimpses of each other's vulnerabilities, sharing stories they wouldn't reveal in public. This attraction was unexpected, and if she were honest, it made her uneasy. She knew he was married. It wasn't a secret. She had even seen pictures of Jonathan and Rebecca at charity galas and business conferences. They looked impeccable together, radiant in their combined success. When Jonathan strode into the room, her heart thumped. He wore a navy suit tailored to perfection, exuding confidence. He smiled, and she smiled back. Their eyes exchanged something deeper than a mere professional greeting. "How are you, Lily?" he asked, settling into the chair next to hers. The subtlety of sitting next to her rather than across was not lost on either of them. "I'm all right," she managed, clearing her throat, a bit anxious about finalizing the sponsors. Jonathan nodded, scanning the documents she handed him. "Don't worry. I spoke to Philip Morgan from Morgan Enterprises. He's on board. Just needs some clarifications. You know how these high-profile donors can be, wanting their brand front and center." "Of course," she said. "Thanks for the heads up." Their meeting progressed through bullet points and strategy outlines, peppered with mild flirtations disguised as jokes. When they finished, Jonathan insisted on walking her to the elevator. The tension between them built, a gravitational pull that begged for something to happen, but was forcibly contained by the presence of passing colleagues. That night, Lily found a text from Jonathan waiting for her. "I'm thinking about you." This can't be simple for either of us, but I can't stop. She read it over and over, tears welling up uninvited. She typed a response, deleted it, typed again, and finally settled on, "I don't know what to say, but I can't stop either." The line was crossed. One could argue it had been crossed the moment they shared their first secret phone call, but words on a screen made it official. In that moment, Lily felt a pang of dread. She pictured Rebecca Harrington, the epitome of grace, style and power, wondering what it would take for that woman to discover the truth and how catastrophic the fallout might be. In the world of the elite, rumors spread at breakneck speed. Exclusive clubs, private yachts, opulent fundraisers, all these gatherings offered ample opportunity for hushed gossip. It wasn't long before Clarissa Monroe again caught wind of speculation that Jonathan Harrington was seen in discreet corners with an attractive young consultant. Clarissa, protective of Rebecca, decided to do some digging. During a charity auction at the Met, she observed Jonathan from a distance. He mingled with dignitaries and business magnates, but his gaze periodically drifted toward a figure in a midnight blue dress, Lily Caldwell. They exchanged loaded glances, fleeting touches, and a near spark of electricity that was difficult to ignore. The final confirmation came when Lily laughed at something Jonathan said, placing her hand gently on his forearm. In Clarissa's eyes, the moment was more intimate than it should have been. Meanwhile, Rebecca, preoccupied with her own social obligations, chatted with other patrons. She appeared radiant, but Clarissa couldn't help noticing her friend's forced smile. Had Rebecca noticed something was amiss too? After the event, Clarissa pulled Rebecca aside under the guise of discussing a potential philanthropic partnership. The lively chatter in the Met's lobby provided enough background noise to shield their conversation from prying ears. "Rebecca, my dear," Clarissa began carefully, "how have you been lately? Are things okay with Jonathan?" Rebecca offered a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We've been so busy. He's invested a lot of time in his new foundation project. I barely see him these days." Clarissa nodded slowly. "Yes, that's what I've heard. He's been working closely with that marketing consultant, Lily Caldwell. She's quite capable from what I understand." Rebecca's grin tightened. She sensed Clarissa had a point to make, but she wasn't entirely ready to hear it. "I've only met Lily once in passing. She seems professional." Clarissa raised an eyebrow. "Professional, yes. And also quite friendly with Jonathan. Possibly more than friendly, if you catch my drift." At that, Rebecca's pulse fluttered in discomfort. She tried to maintain composure, but Clarissa knew her too well. "I don't know that there's anything going on there," Rebecca responded, perhaps too quickly. "Of course," Clarissa said gently. "I just thought you should be aware of what people are saying. You know how these circles are. They love a scandal." Rebecca forced another smile, effectively ending the conversation. She reassured herself that Clarissa's concerns were unfounded rumors, but deep down she recognized the seeds of doubt in her own heart. She resolved to pay closer attention, to search for the truth behind closed doors, and to maintain her dignity as a Harrington at all costs, even if it meant confronting the unthinkable. One evening, Jonathan and Rebecca prepared to attend a gala at the historic Plaza Hotel. Dressed in a sparkling ivory gown, Rebecca waited downstairs while Jonathan tied his bow tie. They had shared few words that evening, as had become their unfortunate habit. But something inside Rebecca urged her to break the silence. "Jonathan," she began, glancing up the staircase, "I was thinking about taking a more active role in the new foundation. It might be good to use my network to attract additional donors." Jonathan stiffened. He knew Lily would be at the event tonight, overseeing the marketing aspects. The idea of Rebecca plunging herself into the same project unnerved him. "That's a great idea," he managed, trying to sound enthusiastic. "We can talk details after the gala." Though his words were agreeable, his tone carried a hint of tension that Rebecca didn't miss. She wondered if he was uneasy because the foundation was his brainchild, or was it because Lily Caldwell would be there? They arrived at the plaza, stepping onto a red carpet lined with photographers. Flashbulbs erupted in a rapid staccato as they posed. Jonathan in a classic black tuxedo, Rebecca in her elegant gown. Inside, chandeliers glittered, reflecting in polished marble floors. Waiters glided through the crowd, offering champagne flutes. Every corner exuded opulence. Rebecca kept her head high, smiling graciously at acquaintances, all the while searching for Lily among the guests. It didn't take long to find her. Lily was by the grand staircase, wearing a floor-length emerald green dress that highlighted her slender figure. She was talking to a wealthy patron, gesturing with the graceful confidence of someone who understood both power and persuasion. Jonathan caught Rebecca's gaze wandering in Lily's direction. With a slight cough, he directed Rebecca toward a group of business people, among them Daniel Klein, Jonathan's longtime associate. They chatted about market conditions and philanthropic interests, but Rebecca's mind remained elsewhere. Suddenly, Lily joined them. Jonathan introduced her to the group, and then specifically to Rebecca. "Honey," he said, placing a stiff hand on Rebecca's shoulder, "this is Lily Caldwell, the consultant for our foundation's new initiative." Rebecca forced a cordial smile. "It's good to finally speak with you properly, Lily. Jonathan has mentioned how integral you've been to the project." Lily extended her hand, her eyes flicking with a hint of nervousness. "Mrs. Harrington, it's an honor. Your husband has been very supportive of my work. And please, call me Lily." Rebecca nodded, noticing the delicate gold bracelet around Lily's wrist, which looked suspiciously like a limited edition piece Jonathan once admired at a Paris boutique. Could it be a gift from him? The moment was tense, pregnant with unspoken truths. After some forced pleasantries, Lily excused herself to handle foundation matters, leaving the couple alone. Jonathan guided Rebecca to the dance floor, attempting a semblance of normality. They swayed to a waltz, but the distance between them felt immense. As the music played, Jonathan tried to hold Rebecca closer, but her muscles remained taut. Throughout the night, Lily lingered at the periphery of Rebecca's vision, occasionally locking eyes with Jonathan. It was a cat-and-mouse game, and Rebecca found herself seething inside. She had never felt so out of place, betrayed by the very man she had built her life around. By the time they returned home, the silence between them was deafening. They each went to separate rooms, Jonathan to his study, Rebecca to the master suite. Under the veneer of civility, an emotional war was brewing, and Rebecca knew the nights of turning a blind eye were coming to an end. Rebecca decided to take control of the situation. After the gala, she made calls to her connections in philanthropic circles and scheduled lunches and phone meetings. She was determined to embed herself into the foundation's structure. If Lily was part of Jonathan's philanthropic project, then Rebecca would be too. She intended to discover the extent of their involvement, not by confrontation but by strategic observation. 3 days later, she turned up at the foundation's office unannounced, sporting a crisp white blouse and a pair of tailored black trousers. Her entrance was met by startled glances. Rebecca seldom visited, and when she did, it was typically by prior arrangement. But she carried herself with the quiet confidence befitting her status. She walked straight to the manager's desk. "Good morning. I'm here to see Lily Caldwell." "Certainly, Mrs. Harrington. She's in a meeting with Mr. Harrington right now, but—" "I'll wait," Rebecca said, offering a gracious smile that left no room for argument. For half an hour she sat in the lobby, scanning a copy of the Foundation's latest pamphlet. Eventually, the door to a conference room opened. Jonathan stepped out first, looking startled to see his wife. Behind him, Lily hesitated, her eyes wide with apprehension. "Rebecca," Jonathan said, forcing a warm greeting. "I wasn't expecting you. Is something wrong?" "Everything's fine," she replied with a calmness that belied her pounding heart. "I've decided to become more involved. We are, after all, a team." Lily tried to maintain a professional facade. "We'd be thrilled to have you, Mrs. Harrington. There's quite a bit of work you can help us with. Outreach, marketing strategies, donor liaison. It's wonderful to have someone with your connections and expertise. Rebecca gave a pleasant nod. I'm sure we'll work very closely together, Lily. They spent the morning in an impromptu planning session, Rebecca, Jonathan and Lily, around a circular table stacked with documents and laptops. Rebecca asked pointed questions about budgets, timelines and event schedules. She offered suggestions on how to pitch to potential sponsors, referencing personal friends and associates who might donate generously if approached the right way. Throughout the discussion, Jonathan made awkward attempts to guide the conversation in a strictly professional direction. Lily, for her part, remained composed, but occasionally stole nervous glances at Jonathan. Rebecca took in every detail, the fleeting eye contact, the subtle smiles, the way Lily's hand brushed Jonathan's shoulder when reaching for a file. None of it escaped her notice. By early afternoon, Jonathan excused himself for another appointment. Rebecca proposed she and Lily continue brainstorming. Alone, the tension in the room intensified. For the next 2 hours, they sorted through marketing materials. Lily maintained impeccable professionalism, but Rebecca could sense her underlying discomfort. As they wrapped up, Rebecca placed a gentle hand on Lily's forearm, mimicking the casual intimacy she had seen Lily display with Jonathan. Thank you for your time today. I think we'll achieve great things for the foundation. Lily's lips parted in an uneasy smile. Yes, Mrs. Harrington, I hope so. Walking away from that meeting, Rebecca felt a surge of satisfaction. She would not be a passive spectator. If Jonathan and Lily believed they could hide, they would soon learn that Rebecca Harrington was far from oblivious. She would watch, gather evidence, and determine the perfect moment to confront the truth she already sensed lurking beneath their polite exchanges. As the Foundation's flagship gala approached, a high-profile affair to launch new educational programs, Rebecca's involvement grew. She made sure she was included in every decision, from venue selection to table arrangements. Publicly, it was a display of marital unity and philanthropic passion. Privately, it was a strategic cage tightening around Jonathan and Lily. Rebecca even took it upon herself to schedule weekly update meetings at the Harrington estate. She claimed it provided a more relaxed environment for brainstorming. In truth, she wanted to observe how Jonathan and Lily interacted on her home turf, a place she controlled. If there was any spark or slip, any unguarded moment, she would see it. One late afternoon, Lily arrived at the estate for the scheduled meeting. Rebecca greeted her at the door, leading her through a hallway lined with portraits of Harrington ancestors, stern faces from centuries past. Lily couldn't help but feel like their gazes followed her, judging her presence here. "Would you like some tea or coffee?" Rebecca offered, her tone polite yet devoid of warmth. "Tea would be lovely, thank you." They settled in the living room, a grand space with high ceilings, crystal chandeliers and plush velvet sofas. Soft classical music played from hidden speakers. Jonathan would join them shortly, but at that moment it was just the two women. Rebecca served the tea herself, a subtle display of domestic grace. She handed Lily a delicate porcelain cup with gold trim. Lily noticed the Harrington family crest emblazoned on the saucer, an unspoken reminder of the power and heritage behind this mansion and the woman before her. "So, Lily," Rebecca began, crossing her legs and leaning back, "have you lived in New York long?" "Just over a year," Lily replied, taking a cautious sip. "I moved from Oregon to pursue better opportunities." Rebecca tilted her head, as though genuinely curious. "Oregon, that sounds lovely. And have you enjoyed working with my husband?" Lily managed a smile. "Yes, of course. He's been supportive and encouraging in many ways." Rebecca nodded slowly, letting the silence draw out. She wanted to see if Lily's composure would crack under scrutiny. But Lily didn't flinch, maintaining her polite smile, though her knuckles turned white around the teacup's handle. Suddenly, Jonathan breezed into the room, clutching a stack of folders. He greeted both women, then took a seat next to Rebecca. She subtly moved closer, placing her hand on his knee in an intimate gesture that communicated, "He's mine, don't forget it." Lily noticed but kept her gaze firmly on the documents. They commenced the meeting, discussing the final touches for the gala. Color schemes, VIP invitations, a short presentation showcasing the foundation's achievements. The conversation flowed mechanically, lacking the easy rapport Jonathan and Lily usually shared. Rebecca's presence created an invisible barrier, forcing them to stick to business. After 2 hours, they wrapped up. Jonathan escorted Lily to the door, while Rebecca lingered in the living room. At the threshold, Lily offered a polite goodbye, then slipped away into the dusk. Jonathan returned, and for a moment, he and Rebecca locked eyes. She spoke first. "You know, I'm proud of what we're doing with the foundation," she said coolly, rising to her feet. "But I think we need to ensure there are no distractions. A clear mind leads to a clear conscience, wouldn't you agree?" Jonathan's jaw clenched. He recognized the veiled warning. "Yes, I agree." Rebecca smiled, walking past him. "I'm glad we're on the same page." In that moment, Jonathan realized the full extent of Rebecca's awareness. The walls were closing in, and both he and Lily would need to tread carefully. The next few weeks would prove decisive, whether their secret affair unraveled under Rebecca's scrutiny, or if they could somehow keep the flames of their forbidden attraction alive. Days turned into weeks, and the tension reached a fever pitch. The foundation's gala loomed, adding pressure on all fronts. Rebecca and Lily both played their roles to perfection, but something had to give. Late one night, after an exhausting board meeting, Jonathan dropped by Lily's rented apartment in Midtown, an impulsive, dangerous move. She opened the door, eyes rimmed with fatigue, hair loose around her shoulders. The moment he entered, they fell into each other's arms. Guilt and longing intertwined in a desperate embrace. They sat on her small couch, the city lights shimmering through the window. Lily nursed a glass of wine, while Jonathan massaged his temples. "This can't keep going on like this," Lily murmured. "Your wife practically hovers around us now. She knows, Jonathan. I can see it in her eyes." Jonathan exhaled heavily. "I know, but I can't stand the distance between us, Lily. I feel alive with you, in a way I haven't felt in years." She looked at him, tears threatening to escape. "I never planned to get involved with a married man. I never planned to fall in love with you." The confession hung in the air, laden with consequence. Jonathan felt a surge of warmth in his chest, along with a crushing weight of responsibility. He loved Rebecca, or at least the memory of what they once had. But Lily had reignited a spark in him that refused to be extinguished. "Lily," he whispered, brushing a stray hair from her face, "I don't know how to fix this without breaking something else. If I left Rebecca, it would be catastrophic, not just personally, but socially, financially. Everything would unravel." "Then why come here tonight?" Lily asked, her voice cracking. "Why risk it all?" "Because I can't stay away," Jonathan admitted, barely above a whisper. They continued talking into the early morning hours, an outpouring of emotional confessions, fears, and impossible scenarios. Eventually, Lily dozed off against his shoulder, and Jonathan stared at the skyline, wondering if love was worth the devastation it might cause. Unbeknownst to them, a private detective, hired by Clarissa Monroe, sat in a parked car on the street below, camera lens trained on Lily's window. He captured photograph after photograph. Jonathan arriving, the silhouettes embracing behind drawn curtains, the light still shining at 2 a.m. The evidence Clarissa needed was rapidly piling up. She intended to protect Rebecca, even if it meant delivering this devastating truth herself. Clarissa paid the detective handsomely for his silence, stashing the damning photos in a sealed envelope. It was time to confront Rebecca with indisputable proof, leaving no room for doubt or denial. She called her friend and asked to meet privately at a discreet cafe in Soho, far from prying eyes. Rebecca arrived looking impeccable as ever in a tailored skirt and silk blouse. But Clarissa noticed new lines of worry etched into her friend's face. They found a quiet table, ordered coffee, and exchanged pleasantries. Clarissa let the minutes tick by, waiting for the right moment. Finally, Clarissa opened her handbag and withdrew the envelope. She slid it across the table to Rebecca. "I'm sorry, but you need to see these." Rebecca frowned, hesitated, then carefully opened the envelope. Her hands shook slightly as she flipped through the photographs. Jonathan entering Lily's building, the lights in her apartment window, Jonathan emerging hours later. The timeline printed at the bottom confirmed how late he stayed. Each image was a fresh blow to Rebecca's chest. She clenched her teeth, fighting tears. Clarissa reached across the table to hold Rebecca's hand. "I know it's hard," Clarissa said softly, "but you needed to know. I hired a professional, so there's no guesswork." Rebecca took a long, trembling breath. "Thank you for being honest." Clarissa nodded, her eyes brimming with sympathy. "What are you going to do?" The question lingered. Rebecca wasn't sure. Part of her wanted to confront Jonathan immediately, to unleash her fury and demand answers. Another part wanted to guard the Harrington name from scandal. She thought of the philanthropic gala just a week away. Exposing their marital turmoil now would overshadow everything the foundation had worked toward. There was also her own pride to consider. Did she really want the world to see her humiliated? "I'm not sure yet," Rebecca finally replied, "but I'm going to handle it on my terms." Clarissa squeezed her hand. "I'm here for you, whatever you decide." Rebecca nodded, tears threatening but never falling. She slid the photos back into the envelope, placed it in her purse, and left the cafe. As she walked away, she felt a swirl of fury, heartbreak, and a perverse sense of relief. At least now, the illusions were gone. The question was, what would she do with the truth? In the days leading up to the gala, Rebecca acted with calculated composure. She kept the photos locked in her personal safe, steeling herself with the knowledge that she held the power to decide the next move. She continued to attend foundation meetings, greet Lily with courteous smiles, and maintain her role as Jonathan's supportive wife. Jonathan, meanwhile, felt the walls closing in. Rebecca's sudden civility unsettled him more than any confrontation could have. He sensed she knew, but he couldn't be sure. Lily grew increasingly anxious, her eyes betraying fear whenever Rebecca was near. On the eve of the gala, the Harrington estate buzzed with preparations for a private dinner to entertain select donors. Caterers scurried through the kitchen, staff polished silverware, and florists arranged elaborate centerpieces. Rebecca orchestrated it all with the grace of a seasoned hostess, even as her emotions simmered. That evening, as Jonathan dressed in his bedroom, he caught sight of Rebecca in the mirror. She wore a sleek, black cocktail dress that accentuated her figure. She looked stunning, confident, and untouchable. He wondered if she'd grown colder to him, or if it was simply his guilt making everything seem distant. He cleared his throat. "Rebecca, about tomorrow night's gala." She turned, her eyes meeting his with a deliberate calm. "Yes, darling?" Jonathan froze, searching her face for a clue. "I just wanted to say, I appreciate you stepping up. I know you've taken on a lot of the planning." Rebecca nodded, applying a final touch of lipstick. "Yes, well, that's what partners do, isn't it?" Her words hung in the air, ripe with meaning. Jonathan forced a thin smile, and they walked downstairs together, a picture of marital unity for the waiting guests. The dinner passed smoothly, featuring light conversation and fine wine. Jonathan circulated the room while Lily stayed away, officially to finalize last-minute details with the event team. As the evening wound down, Rebecca made polite excuses to retire early, leaving Jonathan to see off the remaining donors. Climbing the grand staircase, she felt a rush of conflicting emotions. She paused briefly at the gallery of family photos. Among them was a picture from their wedding day, Jonathan lifting her veil, gazing at her with love that once seemed eternal. "It didn't have to be this way," she whispered to the empty corridor. Tomorrow was the gala, and soon the final pieces would fall into place. She imagined Lily would be there, Jonathan by her side, overshadowed by the promise of philanthropic triumph. Little did they know that the real drama would unfold once the lights dimmed. Rebecca intended to take control of her own narrative, no matter the cost. The evening of the gala arrived. Under glittering chandeliers in a ballroom adorned with cascading floral arrangements, New York's elite convened in their finery. A live string quartet performed on a raised platform. Cameras flashed at the entrance as VIPs arrived, their names echoing across social media almost in real time. Rebecca stood at the center of the crowd, greeting guests with effortless charm. She wore a deep burgundy gown, setting herself apart from the sea of black and gold ensembles. Jonathan joined her, looking impeccably polished, introducing her to high-profile donors and board members. Yet an undercurrent of tension pulsed whenever they exchanged glances. Shortly after the opening remarks, Lily appeared. She wore a shimmering silver dress, understated yet eye-catching. She took her place near the stage, ensuring the event's agenda flowed seamlessly. Her every move radiated both professionalism and caution. She avoided direct contact with Jonathan unless necessary. At 8 o'clock, the Foundation's keynote presentation began. A video montage highlighted their work in underprivileged communities, a reel designed to tug at heartstrings. Jonathan stepped to the podium to deliver a stirring speech about education and opportunity. He acknowledged Lily for her marketing genius and singled out Rebecca for her invaluable support. Cameras flashed, the audience applauded, and the donors beamed at the philanthropic spirit in the room. Rebecca smiled on cue, but her heartbeat thundered in her ears. Her mind replayed the images Clarissa had shown her, the envelope hidden away in her safe. She planned to confront Jonathan eventually, but she wasn't sure if tonight was the right time or place. Another voice told her that revealing the truth at this glittering event would be the ultimate revenge, an explosive finale no one would forget. As the applause subsided, dinner was served at candle-lit tables. Rebecca found herself seated between Jonathan and Daniel Klein, while Lily was at a nearby table with other staff members. Course after lavish course arrived: lobster bisque, seared scallops, tender filet mignon. The clink of silverware on china and the muted hum of conversation enveloped the room. Halfway through dinner, Jonathan leaned in, whispering to Rebecca, "I'm going to step out for a moment. Need to check on something." Rebecca gave a curt nod, suspecting he might use the chance to see Lily. Her suspicion proved correct. She soon spotted Jonathan and Lily speaking in hushed tones by the side entrance. They stood close, not touching but emanating a magnetism that was undeniable. Rebecca's stomach twisted. Abruptly, Lily turned and walked away, leaving Jonathan standing alone with a conflicted expression. Rebecca sipped her wine, trying to steady her nerves. She was done watching passively. It was time to strike. After dinner, guests began migrating to the open bar and dance floor. Meanwhile, a hush fell over a small corridor at the back of the ballroom. Rebecca had slipped out into the dimly lit hallway, lined with gilded mirrors and ornate sconces. She knew Jonathan often used this route to avoid the crowds. Her assumption proved correct. She caught Jonathan sneaking away, phone in hand, likely texting Lily to arrange a covert rendezvous. Stepping into his path, she forced a neutral expression. "Jonathan," she said quietly, "mind if we talk?" He froze, guilt flashing in his eyes. "Sure. Let's find a private spot." They moved further down the corridor until they reached a vacant lounge room. Inside, the muffled music from the gala created a surreal backdrop. Closing the door behind them, Rebecca faced Jonathan, arms folded. Her voice trembled with restrained fury. "I know everything, Jonathan." He swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" She laughed bitterly. "Don't insult my intelligence. You and Lily, sneaking around, staying at her place until the early hours. I have photographs." His face went pale, confirming her worst fears. "Rebecca, She raised a hand to silence him. "Don't even try to deny it. I've spent weeks observing you, picking up the clues, ignoring them, wanting desperately to be wrong. But I'm not. Clarissa hired a detective, in case you're wondering. I have all the evidence I need." Jonathan's shoulders sagged. "I'm sorry," he whispered, tears brimming in his eyes. "I never meant to hurt you." Rebecca stared at him, a mix of rage and heartbreak twisting her features. "Did you think you wouldn't? You've humiliated me, Jonathan. You've jeopardized our marriage for, what exactly? A fling. Or do you love her?" He closed his eyes, unable to meet her gaze. "I don't know. Everything got so complicated. I felt alive with Lily in a way I haven't in years." "Alive," she echoed, voice catching on a sob. She steadied herself, unwilling to break down in front of him. "So our life wasn't enough?" "That's not fair," he hissed, though gently. "You and we've been distant for a long time. After I expanded Harrington Global, we stopped connecting the way we used to. I felt trapped in routines, responsibilities, images I had to uphold." Rebecca pressed her fingertips to her temples, trying to quell a migraine of emotions. "So you decided cheating was the best solution?" Jonathan flinched, tears finally escaping. "I made a terrible mistake. I wanted to tell you, but I just couldn't. I was ashamed. And Lily and there was something there I couldn't ignore. I'm sorry." She inhaled sharply, feeling the tears threatening to spill. "Now that it's all out in the open, what do you want? Are you leaving me for her, or do you expect me to forgive you and let this continue?" A tense pause followed. Jonathan shook his head. "I don't want a divorce, Rebecca. Despite everything, I love you. I want to fix what we've lost, if that's even possible." Rebecca snorted, tears glistening. She turned away, not wanting him to see her vulnerable. "I have to think about that. But you should know I'm not naive. This isn't just about us. I built my life around you. If I destroy your reputation now, you'll lose more than just your marriage. Your empire could crumble." He approached her, but she stepped back, arms up as if warding off a stranger. "Stay away," she said icily. "I'll finish my part of this gala for the Foundation's sake. But after tonight, things are changing." With that, she marched out of the lounge, leaving Jonathan alone, devastated and uncertain. Outside, the night's festivities continued in oblivious splendor. But for the Harringtons, the facade had shattered, and the real drama was only beginning. Rebecca returned to the gala's main hall, her face schooled into composure. She skillfully rejoined conversations, smiling for photographs as though nothing had happened. The only sign of turmoil was the brief tremor in her hand when she reached for another glass of champagne. Across the room, Lily sensed a shift in the atmosphere. Jonathan's expression was grim, and Rebecca's forced smiles hinted at a confrontation. She wondered if tonight was the night their hidden world would collapse. Midnight approached, and the gala began winding down. Guests trickled out, leaving a small knot of staff and a handful of lingering donors. Lily gathered some papers, preparing to leave quietly. But as she passed the corridor near the side entrance, she encountered Rebecca standing with her arms crossed. "Lily," Rebecca said, voice eerily calm. "A word, please?" Lily hesitated, glancing around to see if Jonathan or anyone else was nearby. "Sure, of course." Rebecca led her into a small antechamber lined with coats. Once inside, she closed the door and turned to face Lily. The silence crackled. "I know everything," Rebecca said flatly. "Spare me any protest. I've seen the photos of you and my husband." Lily froze, tears threatening. "Mrs. Harrington, I'm so sorry." "I never wanted—" Rebecca cut her off. "No, you never wanted to, but you did." "I can't pretend to understand the reasons, and at this point, I don't really care. I just need you to hear one thing from me. Jonathan is my husband. The Harrington name is my legacy. I will not let you break what I've built. Do you understand?" Lily's lips trembled. "I do. I never meant to hurt you, and if I could take it back, that's enough," Rebecca said, her voice tight. "We're past apologies. I suggest you step away from him, professionally and personally. If you value your career, your reputation, even your future in this city, you'll heed my warning, because if you don't, I will do everything in my power to make sure the doors you've managed to open here slam shut." Tears slid down Lily's cheeks, but she nodded, feeling cornered and remorseful. "I understand." Without waiting for a reply, Rebecca turned and left the room, letting the door close softly behind her. Lily sank to the floor, hugging her knees, sobbing quietly into her arms. She realized how far she had fallen, drawn in by a man she couldn't resist, only to face the wrath of a woman who had everything to lose. The gala concluded in a haze of conflicting emotions. Over the next few days, Lily cut off all contact with Jonathan. She considered quitting her consultancy job, but leaving abruptly might raise eyebrows. Instead, she quietly wrapped up her responsibilities and avoided being alone with him. Jonathan, for his part, felt torn. He wanted to mend his marriage, yet couldn't shake his feelings for Lily. He tried to call her multiple times, but she never picked up. Finally, Lily sent a single text. "Please don't contact me anymore. It's over." Rebecca, though, hadn't fully decided how she wanted to move forward. She hadn't filed for divorce, but she also hadn't forgiven Jonathan. She oscillated between fury, heartbreak, and a flickering hope that they might rebuild. In the meantime, she took one crucial step, insisting Jonathan return home each night at a specified time under the guise of rebuilding trust. Secretly, she just wanted to track his movements, preventing him from meeting Lily again. One moonlit night, Jonathan found himself pacing in his private study, staring at his phone. The green light blinked. An unread message from Lily. Against his better judgment, he opened it. "I need to see you. One last time. Meet me at the rooftop lounge of the Orion Hotel at midnight." Jonathan's heart pounded. After days of silence from Lily, this message startled him. He knew it was risky, but he also knew he needed closure. So he lied to Rebecca, claiming an urgent business matter had arisen. He left the Harrington estate just before midnight, speeding into the city. Unbeknownst to Jonathan, Rebecca had begun discreetly tracking his car via a phone app installed by Clarissa's detective friend. When she saw him heading to the Orion Hotel, her stomach twisted. She grabbed her coat and purse, summoned a driver, and followed him. At the hotel's rooftop lounge, Jonathan found Lily in a secluded corner, far from the small scattering of late-night patrons. The sky was clear, the city lights a glittering tapestry below. She wore a black trench coat, her face pale and tense. "You came," she said quietly. "You said you needed to see me," Jonathan replied, swallowing hard. Lily looked at him with haunted eyes. "I wanted to apologize. Our relationship was beautiful in its own way, but it was wrong. Rebecca confronted me at the gala. I can't live with the guilt anymore. I'm leaving New York after my contract ends." Jonathan's heart wrenched. "Leaving? Why?" She smiled sadly. "Because I can't be around you without wanting more. And your wife has made it clear what will happen if I stay. You need to work on your marriage, if that's what you truly want." He reached for her hand, but she stepped back. "No, Jonathan, we have to say goodbye." They stood there, tears glistening. Jonathan leaned in, pressing a final kiss on Lily's forehead, a gesture of farewell. That was when Rebecca emerged from the shadows, her fury and heartbreak culminating in a single raw moment. "So it wasn't over," she spat, voice shaking. "You promised you wouldn't see her again." Both Lily and Jonathan spun around. The shock on their faces was palpable. Before Jonathan could form words, Rebecca stepped forward, eyes blazing. "You lied to me," she hissed at Jonathan. Then her gaze shifted to Lily. "Did my warning mean nothing?" Lily stumbled back, tears spilling. "I just needed closure. I was going to leave after this." "Closure?" Rebecca's laughter was sharp, verging on hysterical. "You think closure erases the betrayal? My marriage is in shambles, my heart ripped apart, and you talk about closure." Jonathan tried to move between them. "Rebecca, please, this was a mistake." She shoved him away, glaring. "A mistake? That's all you ever say. You said you wanted to fix things, but here you are with her again." Silence hung in the frosty air, tension thick enough to cut. Lily, trembling, stepped closer, voice breaking. "Mrs. "Harrington, I'm sorry. There's nothing else I can say." Rebecca's chest heaved. "Get out of here," she finally snarled, "before I do something I regret." Lily cast one last tearful glance at Jonathan, then rushed past Rebecca and disappeared into the elevator. Jonathan reached for his wife, only to be met with her fierce gaze. "Rebecca, Don't," she whispered. Her voice cracked under the weight of her emotions. "You said you wanted us, but you still came here." He tried to speak, but words failed him. Rebecca bit her lip, tears streaming. "This isn't just a mistake, Jonathan. It's a choice you keep making." She turned and headed for the stairs, leaving Jonathan alone under the starlit sky, his world on the brink of destruction. In the following days, Lily packed her belongings and quietly left New York for the West Coast, turning down further offers from Harrington Global. Rebecca served Jonathan with a legal separation agreement, refusing to finalize a divorce immediately, but establishing boundaries. She moved into a separate wing of the estate, focused on therapy, personal growth, and deciding her future on her terms. Jonathan tried to salvage what remained. He wrote letters, attended counseling sessions, made grand gestures of contrition, all in the desperate hope that he and Rebecca could find a path forward. The foundation continued its work, ironically benefiting from the wave of publicity surrounding the successful gala. Rebecca took over the leadership position, channeling her emotional turmoil into philanthropic endeavors. She wanted to prove, to herself, to Jonathan, and to the world, that she was more than just a scorned wife. She was a formidable woman who could rebuild and redefine her life. Time passed, and slowly the dust began to settle. Jonathan, humbled by his actions, continued therapy, addressing the void that led him astray. Rebecca allowed him to be part of her philanthropic activities, but maintained a strict emotional distance. They remained cordial in public, presenting a united front for business and social functions. Privately, Rebecca's emotions shifted daily. Some days she leaned toward reconciliation, recalling the love they once shared. On others, she seethed with bitterness and envisioned a life free from him. Yet, in the quiet corners of her mind, she recognized that love, once deeply rooted, seldom died overnight. Their story was still unfolding, shaped by heartbreak and betrayal, but also by the possibility of forgiveness and renewal. Whether they chose to fight for their marriage or end it for good would be revealed only in time. For now, all that remained was the hush that follows a ferocious storm. Torn and battered, yet somehow alive, each sought a separate horizon, carrying the lessons learned and scars earned in the dangerous dance of forbidden love. Thank you for joining me on this twisting journey of love, betrayal, and second chances. We watched as Rebecca Harrington uncovered her husband's secret liaison, bravely confronted the woman who threatened her marriage, and wrestled with whether her partnership with Jonathan could ever be repaired. Through heartbreak and revelation, each character fought their own battle between desire and conscience, leaving us all questioning what we might do when faced with such a betrayal. If you were enthralled by the drama, the emotional confrontations, and the potential for redemption, don't forget to show your support. Like this video to let me know you enjoyed the story. Share it with friends who love real lifestyle romantic drama, and subscribe to this channel for more immersive tales. Your engagement helps bring more captivating stories to life. Until next time, thank you for watching and for being part of this storytelling adventure.